I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. Incredibly graphic testimony today in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. And we have to warn you, some of what you hear.
Sean Diddy Combs has just been sentenced to 160 years behind bars. You heard that right, 160. The courtroom fell silent when the final tally came down. No one moved. Diddy didn't cry, didn't plead, didn't even blink. But make no mistake, this wasn't some symbolic gesture. This was a gabble off the American justice system, hitting harder than anyone expected. This isn't just a prison term. It's the kind of punishment receipt note for missteps or moral failings, but for something much darker and longer buried. This was a slow-motion detonation that finally went off.
Well, the things that I experienced with him were monster-like. That stuff almost destroyed
One built from years of whispers, lawsuits, closed-door settlements, and now a legal reckoning that reads more like Athy tried everything. His lawyers working around the clock, scrambling through federal guidelines like Wall Street quants, pleaded for leniency. They floated sentences of 5 years, maybe 10, at most. They whispered behind closed doors about plea deals. Rumors even floated that Diddy would name names. Hand over the skeletons hiding in the VIP lounges, back offices, and silent studios, and some insiders claimed there was talk of illicit accomplices, enablers, powerful co-conspirators whose wound masks might crack if Diddy decided to sing. But it didn't matter. Not to Judge Subramanian, not to the prosecution, not to the survivors in the gallery, or the nation watching with popcorn and disgust. The gavel came down and it came with a message. No more escape for the man who once declared himself the king. What happened behind scenes of that courtroom was more than law. It was theater, and it was war. For weeks, Diddy's team paraded legal muscle. They spun him not as a predator, but as a broken man with a wild past and bad taste in company. They leaned into the spectacle, hoping, perhaps, the jury would separate the man from the myth. They even succeeded on some counts. Not guilty of racketeering, not guilty of trafficking, but that didn't matter when 12-man Act violations were enough to flip his world.
People came through his orbit. How many people could this have happened to? And how did he get away with it for so long?
Upside down. Each carried a potential 10-year sentence. Multiply it, stack them, add enhancements. The judge hinted at like obstruction, witness intimidation, prior civil settlements, and the twisted scope of what was described as commercialization. And suddenly those small charges had teeth, and those teeth bit down hard. Gripping the industry right now, Cassie Ventura, the ex-girlfriend, once the princess of Diddy's mansion, Palace Empire, now rumored to be the queen on the prosecution's chessboard. The whispers are deafening. Did she cut ice? Deal. One source close to the U.S. Attorney's Office insists that Ventura's testimony was more than voluntary. Thatch had incentive, protection, and a plan on paper. She appeared as a brave survivor, giving emotional raw testimony about being forced into those infamous freak-off sessions, but peeled back a layer, and it starts to look calculated. Cassie's lawsuit last year, settled in under 24 hours, residue bruise. But what if that wasn't the end of her story? What if that was her first move in something much bigger? Because when she took the stand, 9 months pregnant, calm, composed, and specific, something shifted. Prosecutors leaned in. The defense squirmed. Her 4-day testimony painted a picture of a man who wasn't just obsessed with control, but willing to sacrifice anyone in his orbit to keep his legend. And according to at least one legal analyst, her
as Wild King Nights. And what a Wild King Night was when him and a guest would go to a hotel room or be at his home, his bedroom, and they would have intimate gatherings. I would have to go and prep that hotel room, which consisted of baby oil.
Sealed psychological conviction long before the legal one. The defense tried to cast out, even used text messages to make her look complicit. But the jury saw something else. Someone who had endured, who had cracked, and then come back for precision. And if the rumors are true, she didn't just come back for truth. Insiders from Diddy's former camp say that, around the time her lawsuit was filed, there was a shift in his behavior. He stopped calling certain people. He stopped showing up in LA. Some claim he knew what was coming. Others say he didn't think she'd actually flip. After all, Cassie knew everything: the parties, the cameras, the entertainment. If someone were the manual on how Diddy's dark empire worked, it would have been her ghostwritten memoir. But instead of a book, we got a testimony. And according to one former Bad Boy Records executive, that testimony was the key to the vault. But betrayal, if that's what it was, didn't stop with Cassie. There's a darker rumor now swirling, one that's sending shivers through the music industry's old.
This clean businessman who rise to the top because he was such a powerful and smart, educated man. I had no idea that he had this other side to him. And when I started to get exposed to his lifestyle, I started to really realize, like, this guy has an addiction. It's not just, once every few weeks, it's every day.
That members of Diddy's inner circle were quietly feeding the feds long before the trial even began. The extortion plot, they're calling it a theory, unconfirmed, whispered in high-end lounges and private Discord channels that several former employees and business partners may have turned state's evidence to sabotage. Could it be that Diddy's own house staff, the ones who ordered the cars, booked the flights, even handled Ed's black pouches, rumored to be full offered supplies, were the ones who latex bodyguards who spoke on background hinted that a core group of long-term employees had been under federal watch since at least early 2023. A former road manager, now relocated to Atlanta, told a blogger in April that subpoenas had been flying around like confetti. This is true. It's not just that Diddy was sprayed, it's that he was under siege from people he trusted to hold his secrets.
It was like, wow, for Diddy? What? That was a person that I looked up to, the mogul. So, and I listened to all the artists that he made superstars. And so to have a chance to be able to be signed to him, it was amazing. It was like, oh my God, I'm here. I finally did it.
People who once helped stage his birthday parties now testifying out blackmail schemes and videotapes stored in private vaults. And then there's the strange silence from so many of his former industry friends. Not a single public statement from top-tier collaborators. No high-profile legal fundraisers. No public showings of solidarity beyond a few free pup shirts and heavily oiled influencers outside of Manhattan courthouse. Why? Some say it's self-preservation. Some say others say it's fear. That's whatever he was convicted of. The deeper one juror, speaking anonymously, told reporters after the trial he was fighting for himself. But he was alone. Alone. That's a word that didn't used to fit Sean Combs. Not in the 9 South, notin' the 2000s, not even 5 years ago. Boot alone is how he stood when the sentence was read. Alone is how he waits no behind bars, stripped of power, influence, and if the rumors are true, stripped by the very people he matterick, famous, and loyal. Or so he thought, and as the last echoes of Thegavel
of coming forward, they've been afraid of what he could potentially do to them within the industry, what he could do to them professionally, maybe even personally. And so yes, it's been a dark secret they've held on to for a very
the cold walls of that courtroom. The most haunting moment wasn't the sentence. It was the judge's words, with a steady voice that could sharper than any headline. Judge Arun Subramanian declared Combs a danger to society. He didn't say it in passing. He said it with weight, with staring straight at a man once hailed as untouchable. According to legal observers present during the sentencing, the judge leaned heavily on the idea that Diddy had used his wealth and influence to destroy lives. And those lives stacked in court files, behind sealed depositions, and in whispered testimonies, were the real evidence. The verdict may have been about transporting people for private acts, but the sentence that was about something bigger, control, manipulation, and the unchecked power of celebrity, was a recalibration, a line drawn in the sand by the justice system, signaling that even men with private jets, billion-dollar portfolios, and Grammy awards aren't immune to consequence. Legal insiders say the severity of Diddy's sentence wasn't merely about punishment. It was about precedent, because behind the courtroom drama and tabloid frenzy, something else is happening. This could very well be themament. The industry's old guard starts to crumble, a silent warning to the other titans of entertainment.
He cornered me. And then he asked me, with his arm up, he asked me, how you doing? I'm kind of like, wow, what the heck? Very uncomfortable. And then he rubbed his hand down my breast. He said, if you need anything at all.
Entertainment. Postgrets are still buried behind mansion gates and NDAs. The days of buying Zalance, weaponizing loyalty, and ridding history with hush money may finally be over. But if that was to make your jaw tighten, let's talk about one of the strangest, most disturbing details that crawled out from the underbelly of this entire case, the baby oil. Yes, That seemingly innocent item has become a chilling symbol, repeated throughout witness statements and backed by visual evidence shown on Lido, the jury. The baby oil wasn't just background texture. In Diddy's bizarre world, it was ritual. A former assistant testified that dozens of bottles were stocked like trophies in hotel suites, penthouses, and even his studio compound. They were used not for skincare or vanity, but to orchestrate, to dehumanize, to turn moments. Prosecutors described it as a recurrent of power dynamics. And the priests understandably latched on. Social media wrapped it, with some calling it the oil signature, a grotesque calling card of a man who allegedly turned private encounters into staged showcases. Theater Freakoff may have drawn.
Like, really, I'm in this moment right now. This is crazy. Sorry. People don't really know how much what it does to you when something that you love is taken from you and thrown away like it don't even matter, and then they move on with their lives and you're stuck. You're stuck during those years. You're still stuck.
Snickers at first, but in court, it landed like a punch. Witnesses described entire rooms dimly lit, soundproofed, where guests were instructed, sometimes coerced, to participate in scenes orchestrated to satisfy Diddy's voyeuristic demands. And in almost every retelling, the oil waste there. Some said it was poured deliberately. Some said it was used as currency. Some said it was demanded. Whatever the case, it became a symbol not of pleasure, but of power. And now in the fallout, it's everywhere. Bottles were found during the March 2024 raids at both his LA mansion and Miami Starland compound. One investigatorily referred to the search "sinious, sterile but thicky." Dozens of unassigned bottles lined like decor, as if waiting for the next session that never came. Forensic experts took samples, but what they uncovered wasn't scientific. It was a pattern, an obsession, a man clinging to rituals that blurred the line between performance and pathology. Which brings us to where things stand now. Because if you thought this trial closed the book, think again. Diddy may have been historic. Boutet was only criminal court. What's coming next could be even more devastating. There are still over 60 civil lawsuits pending, many filed by
with alleged victim number 4, who goes by the name Mia. It's an alias. She is one of the people who is testifying where the judge has granted her anonymity. She is on the stand, but everybody in the courtroom has been warned. Do not reveal her identity. Do not even
anonymous individuals, many invoking threesome language, the same scenes, the same killing patterns. These cases range from alleged coercion to manipulation, and even more damning from people who claim they were teenagers when civil lawyers are circling like sharks, and the courtroom is only one battlefield. The industry is the author. But before we accept the trial's outcome as a clean win for justice, we have to ask, how free was that jury? Really, because behind the wood, paneled walls and legal posturing, there is growing chatter that the 12 men and women who decided Diddy's fate were under intense, perhaps even unnatural pressure. While the verdict landed heavy, it didn't come from a vacuum. The media coverage was relentless. Public protests, social media campaigns, even late-night monologues cast Diddy as either a fallen icon or a monster in designer shoes. Every one of those narratives, consciously or not, made its way into the jury room. We're not just sticking about opinions here. We're talking about atmosphere, the kind that fogs up objectivity. Even when everyone swears they're just following the some legal analysts have pointed out that this case was always about more than evidence. It was about symbol.
excuse me, that she was Diddy's ex-assistant. She said he her, sexually assaulted her in various ways multiple times. He exacted unbelievable violence against her, threatened her, one point allegedly threatened to take her phone and use anything on
about the slow dismantling of a persona built on untouchable bravado. And when a defendant walks into court with decades-off cultural weight on his shoulders, the jurors aren't just judging a man, they're judging a myth. The emotional toll of sitting through weeks of graphic testimony, all while being silently watched by the press, the public, and 1,000 unsleeping comment sections, is incalculable. That tension, that awareness that every decision would be dissected in real time across every major platform created a high-stakes no jury training could prepare them for. Adding to the complication was a delicate dance prosecutors performed in open court. They avoided direct apples to emotion, but layered their strategy with subtle cues. A well-placed pause here, a pointed photograph there, reinforcing not just facts, but a mood. Several observers noted that the Clausen arguments seemed more cinematic than procedural, blurring the line between closing statement and cultural Was it effective? Absolutely. But the question lingers, did it nudge the scale?
Distortion that we heard when Cassie took the stand and testified on that airplane ride back from France. Diddy said, "You don't do a freak off, I'm going to release one of the freak off videos that you are profiled in." And
Of fairness just enough to tip them? When you choreograph a narrative that powerful, even subconsciously, the risk isn't that Thedgery doesn't believe you. It's that they feel like they have to. And it's not just the media or the prosecution that created this heat. That Courtos itself became a stage. Outside those doors, supporters and protorters camped for days. Home Madette shirts, baby oil theatrics, influencer live streams with hashtags ready to go. Jurors couldn't avoid it. Not entirely. Even if they turned off their phones, avoided coverage, they still walked past that circus every single morning. And that has a psychological effect. It reminds them that the trial isn't just about what's on the record. It's about the perception. And whether they want to be the 12 who let a powerful man walk free after everything they heard, we'll probably never know. What reality tipped the scale?
This new audio from the Diddy trial, and it is pretty explosive. This is audio of a voicemail that Diddy left to the Jane Doe who's been testifying in this trial for the last couple days. And he sounds really annoyed. He's talking about her maybe giving him the silent treatment, and his response is, "I got a busy life. I can't be dealing with your silent treatment."
Behind those closed deliberation doors, was it the evidence, the emotion, the collective weight of O Nation staring them down? All we know is this. One alternate juror told reporters understood the verdict, but admitted the case had doubt laced through it from the start. And if the deliberations were even half as complicated as the cultures are ending them, then we're left with an uncomfortable truth. Justice may have been served. But was it entirely free of influence, or just the best possible former collaborators have gone radio silent? The fashion deals are suspended. Music streaming platforms, while still hosting his catalog, are quietly reevaluating algorithm placement. Meanwhile, activist groups are calling for a broader audit not just of Diddy's behavior, but of how many within the industry allegedly enabled it. Booking agents, managers, security personnel. How many people saw the signs and stayed? How many signed NDAs to protect a brand instead of a person? And then there's Ali Carter. Her claims dismissed by some as sensational now sit in a very different light. She wasn't the only Oneto mentioned tunnels, secret gatherings, or hype names whispered in dark rooms. And while the ritualistic elements of her testimony remain unproven, the tone she struck, the idea of performance masking